Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. November 22nd is the date. MLS clubs have made their roster decisions, and, well, all of them but one have publicized them. We're waiting on you, DC United. The list from MLS of who is available in the waiver process and the re-entry process, that's going to come out early this afternoon. We have a pretty good idea of who those players will be, barring any different decisions that the MLS office makes about years served, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll go through that this morning. We'll talk about Atlanta's moves. We'll talk about who Atlanta could be looking at that could be available in those processes or in free agency, because there are some interesting players that will not be back with their clubs, at least as of now. There's always the possibility that deals get struck, but right now there's going to be some players on the market that are a little surprising based off how they played last year, based off quality, based off contract situations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll get into all that this morning. Join the conversation on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. And John has requested the floor.
Yes, although I did have a list of 8 guys from yesterday's rosters minus DC United. But yes, I wanted to alert everyone to something that has popped up in something that I got in the mail yesterday. And it has to do with a particular magazine and best broadcast duo. Time to brag a little bit. Page 82 goes over a situation involving 2 gentlemen in a particular game in October against the New England Revolution. Talks about a wonderful give and take between 2 individuals who provide play-by-play in color for a particular team that's broadcast on 92.9 The Game. They go through the Joseph Martinez situation against New England, where one of the individuals shouted one thing and the other came back as a part of the conversation. I'm skipping ahead just so I don't read the whole thing. Indeed, it wasn't. The yellow card went to Martinez for bad acting, officially called simulation. But the exchange highlighted what makes the combination of the 2 men so entertaining that fans watching at home will mute their TV and cue up the Conti Longshore broadcast instead. Remember that Conti's calling the game for radio, and his ability to describe the movements of the game in both descriptive and real-time terms is astounding, while Longshore's encyclopedic analysis of the game always feels educational without being condescending. It's their voices that are piped through the stadium concourse on game days, and it's their call on the 2018 MLS Cup, Atlanta's first major sports victory in a generation, thanks very much, that earned the duo a Georgia Association of Broadcasters award this year. We concur with the judges. Atlanta Magazine, Best of ATL, page 82, Best Broadcast Duo, Mike Conti and Jason Longshore. Nicely done, my friend.
Wow, I didn't know anything about that. I was like, who did I pay off to write something like that? And I was trying to go back through my receipts, and I couldn't find anybody. Wow, that's amazing.
Yep, Best Broadcast Duo, you and Mike. And Station Soccer, by the way, also got a nod in Best of ATL for Best Urban Soccer. Station Soccer's third pitch officially opened across from East Point Marta October 5, counting the thriving 5 points in West End pitches. The organization is now 3 locations deep into its goal of becoming the world's first league of soccer teams representing transit stations. And the initiative is run by the nonprofit organization Soccer in the Streets, which manages a free urban soccer program for Atlanta youth, provides work readiness and leadership training. It's funded by Adult League Play along with support from Atlanta United and other partnerships, soccerstreets.org. So, sorry, had to brag. Carry on.
Very cool. That's funny because I thought that whole situation with the yellow card, penalty, not a penalty, shouldn't have been a yellow card, that was a crazy discussion. And, I mean, it's something that I think because of the fact that Mike and I have called games together for a couple of years now, we can flow with those types of situations pretty well, because that was chaos. And I didn't know if we captured it or nailed it or not, because we didn't know what was going on either. And we're trying to figure it out as we go and talk through it and look at replays and make sense of it. So it felt like a very chaotic situation. I would not have guessed that would have sparked that kind of response. That's very cool. Thank you, Atlanta Magazine. I would have never, ever guessed anything like that was going to happen this morning. So very cool. It's an interesting time for Atlanta United because of the number of players who were let go yesterday, and some weren't a surprise. I mean, the Mikey Ambrose situation, he posted it, so you knew what was coming. Jose Hernandez, you knew that was coming. So a couple of the others, difficult situations. And I guess what I want to touch on before we get deep into individuals is, as I feel like we say a lot when it comes to these MLS rules and MLS situations, you don't know the full picture. You try to connect the dots on some of these decisions as best you can, but how often do you see in sports around the world, in all leagues, where a player will sign a contract that will have an option that final year in the option, it's a pretty big number. I mean, it could be double what the previous salary was. It could be a huge raise. And sometimes, and Justin Merrim could fall into this, and we don't know the situation. Sometimes you can't do the option, but you still want to bring the player back. And John, you were on the conference call yesterday with Carlos Bocanegra and Frank de Boer, and Merrim was one that was mentioned that the option was not picked up, but that doesn't rule out Merrim signing a new deal from scratch. And I think there'll be other players like that around the league too, but it's difficult without knowing all the information. I've seen a lot of people freaking out about a bunch of open spots. It's not as many as you think. A lot of people talking about how much cap space has been cleared. Again, maybe not quite as much as you think when you dig into it. And we'll try to give you the landscape as best as we can this morning. But it's always a tough spot when you get to this point because, in a perfect world, you just keep the same team together forever. But it's not realistic with players' abilities, improving and declining over that time. Players needing more playing time. Players deserving less playing time. Players also in search of new opportunities. So this time of year is always a weird one around the league. And I think as maybe emotional as it was for some of the 17s, you look at a situation like the Red Bulls where, they said goodbye to two club legends. And if you did not see the video that the Red Bulls posted of Luis Robles saying goodbye to staff, that shows you what, he meant to that club and what that club meant to him. That was a really powerful speech from Robles. And he's one that I'm really intrigued to see where he ends up.
He was one of the 8 guys I had on my list after yesterday, and there were folks who had shown the video of the end of the Red Bulls Philadelphia Union match where Bradley Wright Phillips and Luis Robles, almost exhausted after that crazy match, they basically they're incredibly emotional, give each other a very long hug, and the wording by the individual that posted the video was, it ended up being their last match, and it looked like they knew it at the time. Don't know that, but yeah. That was the vibe that was given by looking at the video. But yeah, there were some names on that list yesterday, and Robles was right at the top, and you see Dax McCarty are already trying to recruit some individuals to come and join him, and Robles and BWP are 2 of them.
Yeah, that was a funny tweet from Dax. Robles, he played every minute. I don't think there's any concern about Robles losing a step. BWP lost a step, and it's going to be a difficult decision on him as to where he ends up, what kind of role he ends up with, what everything looks like. So there's players in that situation. There's players who didn't get an opportunity to really break through that are going to be available. There's lots of different things on the table. I do want to touch on one that surprised me, and it's Nico Gaitan.
Yep.
And, well, it's Chicago in general. So let's get to what Chicago did with their moves just to start with, because they maybe made the biggest, boldest moves. They have 16 guys under contract going into 2020, so they've got a lot of space. They did not bring back Nemanja Nikolic. He is out of contract, and he had already announced that. Options not exercised. The ones that will jump out to you are Nico Gaitan, Alexander Katai. Two huge players. So your three biggest players over the last couple of years are all gone from the Fire, along with Dax McCarty, who's been traded. So right now, I mean, you're looking at a team that features CJ Sapong, Jordy Mihailovic, Przemysław Frankowski, Francisco Calvo, Jonathan Bornstein, Kenneth Kronholm. And that's the team that's moving into Soldier Field. So expect Chicago to be very, very active. But Katai, Gaitan, even Nikolic, I think, can draw some interest around the league. There was a very interesting back and forth, and I feel like it's echoed things that we've talked about before on this show when it comes to why Chicago would let him go in Gaitan when he is immediately drawing interest from Premier League clubs.
Yep.
Immediately, buzz started to hit about Gaitan having interest from West Ham, Aston Villa, Sheffield United. Why couldn't you have picked up the option and then moved him? And that's what's so surprising about it. I don't know why teams are letting players walk so easily at times. Yes, you are playing a bit of a risky game when you pick up that option, because then you're picking up the option to sell the player, essentially. And if you don't, then the player's yours. Yeah, you're playing, I guess, a little bit of chicken with that. But to me, that's better to get even a little something than absolutely nothing. And I don't buy the argument, and the argument coming from some people inside the league office, that, well, Gaitan wouldn't be getting that interest if he was under contract. I just don't buy it. Doesn't mean you're going to get a huge number, but something. And something that then you could convert into GAM if you're interested in doing that, and make your team better, and just set a precedent. More than anything, just to say, like, no, we're not going to let players be available on a free so you can sign them. If you want to deal with us, you need to deal with us. And it's really surprising. I mean, it was a club option for 2020 on Gaitan. I just don't know why. I don't know why they didn't pick it up if they wanted to get something out of him. Same with Katai. I feel like both of those guys, you could have gotten some kind of a return.
Yeah, I mean, and you would think that the Chicago front office would be looking at other franchises, and once again, we're looking at UDC, and see how you really are sleeping at the wheel by not doing something like this. And all you're really doing is, once again, you're showing that you're going to let folks walk. And it's mind-boggling to me that you would let a player go, get zero in return, instead of doing at least the most basic thing to sit there, sign him to a deal, put the name on the line that's dotted, and then thinking ahead of time about, okay, we have interest from 3 Premier League teams,
Well,
and
now,
then getting something.
You made an assumption there that I don't think is true. You don't know that Chicago knew there was interest in Gaetan.
True.
Because there might not have
yes.
been. Now, could you have tried to cultivate that interest? Absolutely. But there's no way to know that there was interest beforehand. The interest could be because, hey, the guy's on a free. All right, cool.
Right, true.
But you're not doing your job if you're not trying to cultivate interest on a player that you want to move on. Why are you just letting them walk and not get something for it?
Yes, that. Yeah, that's, why let a player just go when it's an asset that you can sit there and turn into something, hopefully, if there is interest at the end of the deal. I mean, to me, once again, you're sleeping at the switch by not making this kind of activity available to yourself, so you can come up with at least some kind of a financial element out of this. I mean, it's just it's another head scratcher from an MLS team.
I think you could have gotten something within the league too on either one of them, and now, I mean, I wonder what kind of interest both of them are going to get potentially within the league to take him on a flyer. Gaetan will be in the waiver process. Katai, does he go into re-entry? No, he'd be available on the waiver process too, from what I can tell. So if I'm anybody in the league who's got the space for it right now and willing to take the risk, because yes, there's a risk. I mean, the risk is you're going to end up with a player like Katai, who, he's going to take up a designated player spot, but his production, and Toodle Rockman pointed this out yesterday, expected goals and expected assists. That kind of gives you an idea of what he's producing, what he's creating. Katai's number was similar to Alejandro Pozuelo. Gaetan's number was similar to Carlos Heel. 2 very good players. So, you're stuck with 2 very good players. Oh, no. And if you want to move on, then you take the risk. I mean, now, here's the flip side. If Chicago said, you know what, we're not going to risk anything, we're going to go out and sign 2 big names that are going to draw attention, sell shirts, and change the paradigm of what the club is, and we don't want to risk not being able to do that, okay. But that's the bar now. That's the bar for the Fire in their offseason, is they have to sign 2 players that are going to be demonstrably better than Katai or Gaetan, to the point that you would not even risk picking up their option and then moving them in January to create that space. Color me skeptical, because Chicago has been unable to do that for year upon year upon year upon year. So that's where you're at with Chicago. I so disagree with this idea about, you don't want to sit on this. And it was a long, drawn-out conversation between Toodle Rockman and Andrew Wiebe, and Charlie Boehm popped in. And if you want to be a selling league, and Don Garber has said that, if you want to be part of the international transfer market, and everybody said that, you have to operate in a way that demonstrates that. And this is not. These are 2 top players that you're letting walk for nothing.
Yep.
Worst case, absolute worst case, you pick up the option. The idea is, all right, we're gonna find interest for these guys, and we're gonna find something to be able to get assets for them. All right. Could you sell Gaetan or Katai for $500,000 to a club in Europe? Katai, I think you could easily. Gaetan, you probably could. So at a minimum, you're going to get something. Better than nothing. Could you, if you get stuck and you're not finding that kind of deal, could you find a team in MLS that you could trade them to that's not going to use all of their designated player spots? That these 2 guys are not on crazy money, that they would take them. I think you could. I think the risk is not nearly what it's being put out to be. I mean, Chicago did good business in getting these guys on a free, but that doesn't excuse the bad business of letting them walk on a free.
I know that me continually shaking my head doesn't make for good radio, but you sit there and it's like, why do you not want to get something in return for something? And that's probably the most elemental way that I could say it, is that why do you not, and goes back to the point that you were talking about MLS being a selling league. This is another example of a team that is stuck in whatever mindset is there about not wanting to take advantage of a situation. If you have an asset, and this is straight up economics, regardless of whatever the asset is, could be a person, could be a thing. If you have something of value, self-perceived or otherwise, and somebody comes up to you possibly, or someone might have an interest in that widget or in that painting or in that person, why do you not want to take advantage of your possession of that particular item and sit there and say, yeah, I can part with this for X? And it's just, once again, it sits there and it stunts the idea that the league wants to be something, and you continue to have front offices that don't want to take advantage of that and continue to add to the idea of what the league wants to be.
I'm blown away by it, because even just around the league, even if you make the decision, you know what, we need to open these designated player spots, we're going to try to do something big. Around the league, I think there are a number of teams who would be willing to take these players on and give up some allocation money for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not buying it. Colorado Rapids have 3 midfielders on their roster right now. Gaetan and Katai are not crazy dollar figures. They could probably bring them in. Cincinnati could probably bring them in. DC might be able to, although we're still waiting for DC to make an announcement on their roster stuff. It's been sent into the league. It's just, I guess the people writing the press release have been out of the office. I don't know. There's plenty of spots, and then that's not even getting into potentially selling these guys. I think you could find a market for both of them and get a little bit of money and convert it to allocation money and just show that, look, we're in the market. We're doing business. Yes, we have these guys. We got them on a free. We're not asking for a crazy amount of money from you. You want Nico Gaetan? 500, 750,000, $1 million, whatever. Get something. Because now if I'm clubs around the world, and this is what's happened, I'm sure, plenty of times, it's like, no, we're not going to pay you a transfer fee. We'll sign them when they're available on a free, but we're not going to pay you a transfer fee. We don't think you're worth that. Because you did this, Bill Hamid. You did this, Nico Gaetan. You did this, Alexander Katai. So that's just how it's going to go. And it's a bad thing for the league as a whole. So really surprised by that from Chicago. And for me, the bar is set incredibly high now that they have to go replace these guys with players that you just could not risk losing the opportunity to bring them in by not being able to move on from Gaetan or Katai. And I'm not expecting that to be the case because, hello, Chicago.
And I know at some point in the show, folks are probably also going to get into the logo discussion too.
Yeah, please let us know your thoughts on the Chicago Fire logo. I'll tell you what I told the guys in our message thread. If this was the Chicago Fire's first logo, I don't think people would be reacting nearly as badly. It's meh. It's not great, but it's not as bad as I think the reaction has been. The biggest thing is it's just not better than what they had. So if you're going to rebrand, why are you going to something that's not as good as what you had originally? There's some things that, like some of the activewear stuff they did, the uniforms are okay that have leaked. The jerseys that have leaked are okay. They're pretty plain. There's a couple of the things that in their video of T-shirts and stuff. They're like, oh, that's not bad. And I think in a year it'll be like, it's okay. It's just not any better than what they had originally. And that's the biggest thing for me is you put this time into it. Why is it worse? Hello, Chicago. That's just what I keep coming back to. Hello, Chicago. This is what we do. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll dig into the Atlanta stuff. We'll dig into where things stand and an idea of what the cap kind of looks like and what the roster kind of looks like as we go into the waiver and re-entry and free agency process. And we'll give you all the rules and breakdown on that too. Hang out with us. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. November 22nd. Roster moves have been announced around the league by everybody but DC United. Maybe they'll actually do it if they keep hearing us yell about it. Atlanta United was one of them, and we were not... I don't think there was a surprise. I saw some of the surprise reactions on social media, and maybe this is where we get in the bubble of things and talking about it all the time. There wasn't anything that shocked me. I guess the couple things that shocked me were Leandro Gonzalez-Perez is not out of contract at the end of the year. He has, I guess, another option. It must have been a 3-year deal with 2 1-year options would be my guess, or maybe more. But he's not out of contract at the end of the 2020 season, and that's a big, important factor. Also, Tito Villalba was not in an option year, so he is under contract. So those are 2 that had been out there that were not necessarily the case, and that does change everything. Now, the one that you are now in the last year of their contract, because you picked up the option, unsurprisingly, is Julian Gressel. And, John, I think you can speak to it from being on the conference call. It was made pretty clear that it's a priority in signing him to a long-term deal, but there are complications, and the CBA is a big one.
Yeah, and that was one of the points that was made, specifically having to deal with the CBA and having to figure out what that's going to look like before you can sit there and really throw your weight behind any idea that you may have about bringing in particular, adding numbers to contracts, adding salary, and that kind of a thing. Yeah, the phraseology that was used involving LGP was other option years.
Yeah.
And
yeah, because there was an option. I mean, it was specifically said that his option was picked up. So there was an option, but there's multiple options. That's the thing to keep in mind. It's not that he is in the last year of his deal now. Gressel is after the option. Now, we don't know other guys who this is the last year of their contract and if they have an option after that or not. We don't know that, right. But so far with the 2 we know, Gressel is in the last year of his deal for 2020 now. LGP has another option after this year.
Yeah, and so the CBA is always going to be a factor to look into, or just to hold on to when it comes to, well, why hasn't so and so signed, or why hasn't Team X brought team player wise contract forward? Then always kind of keep the CBA in mind as one of those ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. It's just with that unknown factor, it does complicate it, and it does complicate what this kind of deal is going to be specifically, because this is not a typical type of deal. This is a substantial raise and potentially getting into that TAM kind of level. So all of the possibilities for what you can do, you need to know what they are. Let's look at the roster right now, just in terms of the way it's composed. So remember, in MLS right now, according to the current rules that the league is operating under, you have up to 30 spots. You have 20 on the senior roster. You have a supplemental roster. You have a reserve roster. There are restrictions on who can be on a reserve roster and a supplemental roster, and you can push those away from the cap. Those do not affect your cap. So the questions that we don't have answers to yet, and we probably won't until the roster is compliant with MLS right before the season starts. Mo Adams was an option exercised on him. He is not a Generation Adidas player. Does that move him into a senior roster spot? We have no way to know that. We don't know what the numbers we're talking about are. Same with Andrew Carlton, although I'm not expecting that to be the case. I would expect that he will stay in the reserve roster spot as a homegrown player and not move over to the senior roster. Okay, the Adams one is important because you had one extra senior roster spot at the end of the season. If Adams goes in to take that, okay, that one's filled, and we'll go through who is off of it. Gressel was already on the senior roster. Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez is already on the senior roster, so no changes there. Okay. Alec Can, Jeff Larenowitz, offers have been extended to them. So we have to wait on that. The senior roster as it currently stands: Barco, back. Escobar, back. Gallagher, back. LPP, back. Gressel, back. Gazan, back. Heineman, dealing with the loan situation. What was the quote on that? Was it good news is expected, coming soon?
Yeah, it sounds about right. I'm going to go fishing for it real quick.
If that sounds right, that's right. That's fine. I mean, it's just...
Sounds right.
It all sounds like Emerson Heineman will be part of Atlanta United in 2020. I think that's a safe assumption at this point based off what's been said. And he's still currently on the roster because that loan technically is through the end of the calendar year. So, your first 7, alphabetically, on the senior roster remain. Alec Can, offer's been extended. Have to see where that goes. Kevin Kratz, not back, so that opens up a senior roster spot. Jeff Larenowitz, offer extended. We'll have to wait. For now, he's still there. Pitti, Joseph, still there. Justin Merrim, option not picked up, but negotiations ongoing, correct?
Yes.
Because he would be a free agent. He would qualify for MLS free agency based off age and years in the league. Michael Parkhurst went through that last year, the exact same process, if I'm not mistaken, where the option was not picked up, he was signed to a new deal, came back. So Merrim being talked about as negotiations ongoing, you want to get that done before free agency opens up next week.
Everything is on the table was the quote that was used with Merrim.
Okay, so there's a possibility he comes back. Right now, he is not on your senior roster. Darlington Nagbe, not on your senior roster. Michael Parkhurst, not on your senior roster. Florentine Pogba, option not picked up. And he's one that I would assume, he was on a $300,000+ contract last season. Normally, those are going to be starters for you. I don't know if it's any kind of a guarantee that Florentine Pogba would be a starter for you next season. And he's one that I could also see that option year being a fairly large year. Felt like maybe it was a type of contract where it's 1 year, show and prove, we're going to keep you, we're going to have to pay you. And it was too much. So Pogba not back, Remedi back. Vasquez gone, Villalba back. So you've got senior roster spots to work with right now of one that was already free, one that had Vasquez, one that had Pogba, one that had Parkhurst, one that had Nagby. Right now, one that had Merrim, that's 6. One that had Kratz, that's 7. Can and Lorenowitz right now are being negotiated with. We'll keep them in their spots for now. So then you go to the supplemental roster. Mo Adams could move to the senior roster with his option being picked up and his Generation Adidas status going away. I would lean to that being the case, but I don't know if that's a guarantee. We know Miles Robinson's contract would have to put him on the senior roster. I just don't think there's any way that's not happening. So he goes into one of those spots, one of those 7 that are open right now. Brendan Moore, he is under contract. I don't think his status would change on the supplemental roster. Mike Ambrose opens up a supplemental roster spot, and if Robinson and Adams both go to the senior roster, that means you've got 3 supplemental roster spots open. Reserve roster, Bello, Carlton, Luis Fernando, Dion Pereira, Goslin not back, Agos Kunga is back. He's under contract, so you might have 1 spot open on the reserve roster. And I don't know if any of those statuses would change. I guess maybe Carlton, and maybe you have a little bit of flexibility if you move a guy from a reserve spot to a supplemental spot. That's getting deep into the weeds. The basics are got maybe, from doing the math, 5 senior roster spots if we assume Adams and Robinson both have to move up. You've got 3 supplemental spots and 1 reserve spot. A draftee could go into one of those reserve or supplemental spots. If you draft somebody that sticks, last year you didn't. Years previously you did. You've got George Campbell, who will likely go into that reserve roster spot that is open on his homegrown deal. So add him in there. So take that one away. And that's where you're at. You didn't lose anybody that I don't think you could afford to lose. And that's where you look at some of the other moves that teams have made and players that are now gone, and it's like, wow, how are they going to fill that spot? I think the spots that Atlanta now has to fill are more complementary spots, not vital, critical spots, if that makes sense.
And, so this is where the quote unquote fun starts. Not necessarily fun for a front office, but we do have a lot of questions from folks this morning about individuals and possibilities about fitting on rosters and futures and things like that.
Let's start jumping into it. Let's do it.
Natasha at Kitchen Witch ATL. Are young players like Goslin and Okonkwo eligible to play in college after an attempt at a professional career, or does the NCAA not allow that? Wondering what the future looks like for these kids.
The NCAA doesn't allow it. They're professional players now. So Okonkwo, I think, will be able to find a spot in USL Championship. I think he's a USL Championship level striker right now. And if he gets playing time, maybe he can turn into more. But right now, I think that's where he's at. I think he would definitely start for anybody in USL League One. Goslin's tough because, the promise that Chris Goslin has had has been immense. You go back to the U17 World Cup that he played in, you could say his absence on yellow card accumulation knocked the U.S. out of the tournament when they played England. He was that impactful for that team. But injuries have completely derailed his progress, and we don't know what he is at this point. You can't justify keeping him because he hasn't played for you. Did he make an appearance in Atlanta United 2 this season, or did he just make an 18? I don't even know if he made an appearance because he was recovering from injury. If he did, he made 1. Last year at the end, he was gone to an injury. So it's just been, feels like about 18 months of just being away with injuries and training to the side and not being able to be fit enough to play. So he's just got to get healthy. and hopefully he can get healthy first and then find a spot where he can get playing time, and we can see what he could still potentially turn into. I mean, you're talking about a player who's 19. But for him, it's so unknown as to what he can be, because after that U17 World Cup, it's felt like he's been injured ever since.
I was trying to go back and look at stats, but I thought I remembered a 45-minute run in there somewhere.
That's what I was thinking. Is I think he played 45 minutes and then we didn't see him again. So
yeah, any
which way, injuries have derailed his time, and he's just got to play, and he's got to get healthy first before he can play. So, those are two guys who have the opportunity for professional careers, and that's what you have to do. I mean, going to play in college would be a step way down for those two. So it's not something where, if they want to be professional players and you sign a professional contract to become a professional player, you don't want to go to college at this point if you're either one of them. And that's not going to happen. It can't. But that's why you see guys play in USL Championship on academy deals. A player like Will Riley, for example, played a lot of minutes last year, not signing a pro contract. That left open the possibility for him to go to college, and we've seen guys do that over the years, play a lot of minutes with Atlanta United too, and then decide not to sign a pro deal and go to college. We've seen young players decide not to go to college and sign a pro deal and see what they can make of it. Alessandro Castro is one. Jackson Conway is one. It's all about the individual. Playing in college doesn't prepare you to be a professional necessarily. It doesn't necessarily take that opportunity away from you either, but your best way to develop into a professional player is to play in a professional setup. So if that's your goal, going to college doesn't help you in that regard.
Shiva's a little surprised that Atlanta United let Pogba, Shea, and Ambrose all leave at the same time. That left back looks thin, but nothing surprising more than Luis Robles and Red Bulls yesterday.
Well, Pogba doesn't really factor in on the left back side. I mean, I think he can play it in a pinch, but you're not thinking about that on a regular basis. Shea, with the injury, he's got to recover from that before I think anybody will take a risk on bringing him in. It sounds like the progress has been good, but he's just got to get healthy. Ambrose was a bit of a surprise, but again, we don't know what that contract would look like. He was in a supplemental spot. I don't think he could have stayed in a supplemental spot much longer, because I do believe there is an age restriction to it. I'll have to double check that. So if you're talking about going from the supplemental roster to the senior roster when it comes to him, but he's still going to play behind George Bello, you might decide not to use that. You might decide to use your senior roster spot on somebody who's going to be a more impactful member of the squad, and then go get a younger reserve to be behind Bello. So stay tuned on that. I think, you look at the depth chart, you're going to need depth at left back. You're going to need depth up top. You're going to need maybe a little depth in the middle. And some of that's going to depend on Jeff Lorenowitz and if he comes back and what his role is.
Katie Weaver, sad but not surprised to see Kratz on the list yesterday. Hampered by injuries, but always felt he was a versatile, hardworking, cerebral player. Think he finds another MLS home or back to Germany?
Yeah, it's interesting about Kratz on where he could end up. I mean, he impressed me with his soccer IQ, and he also impressed me late in the year with his play at Atlanta United too. Yep. He was really good late in the season in USL Championship. So I think it's just up to him what he wants to do. I mean, he's kind of at that in-between right now of playing in MLS, playing in USL Championship. He could be one of those guys that goes and signs with an independent USL Championship team and play for 3-4 more years and be their captain and be their leader and then go into coaching and make a brand new life for himself. I could easily see him being one of those players. I don't know if he wants to go back to Germany or not. I don't know in Germany what level he would play at. I mean, it would probably be a second division, would be my guess. He might rather stay in the United States and start to ease into what life looks like after soccer. And he's one that I could see being a coach. So the right club that he goes to now could really set him on that path.
Nathan Pugh's not really bothered by any of the moves. He is intrigued on whether any of them will be re-signed as free agents under different terms.
Well, it sounds like Merrim is really the only possibility for option players not picked up that could get re-signed as a free agent. There was no talk of that with Pogba. Can and Larinowitz are different situations because they would be free agents, and you're trying to sign them before they go out into the market as free agents. But Merrim was the only one with an option not exercised that was discussed as potentially coming back, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I would think he'd be the only one under consideration, really.
Daniel Price, while I'm sad that we let a bunch of players go, none of them really surprised me besides Ambrose and maybe Merrim. I thought Merrim was playing well, found himself here this season. I guess he was too expensive.
Probably. I mean, he was on $600,000 plus last year, and Columbus paid part of that. So, is he going to want that kind of money? And he did play well, but he also fell out of the main group at the very end. And he had some bad performances late where he didn't give you much. So that's why he fell out of the lineup. If your thought is he's not a guaranteed starter on a TAM deal, that's tough to stomach. And let's talk about it real quick before we take a quick break from the cap perspective. So without knowing allocation money and who's using what and how it's going, it's a little hard, but let's just look at basic slots. So Nagbe was under $700,000. Robinson will be taking up a bigger chunk now. He wasn't taking up anything on the cap before as a Generation Adidas player. Now he will be taking up a larger amount. So you have to factor that in. You have to keep a slot in terms of one of those $500,000-$600,000 kind of levels for potentially Julian Gressel falling into it. If you sign him to a new deal that would take effect this year. If you sign him to a new deal that would take effect next year, well, he's going to be playing on a cheaper contract this year, and I don't know if he wants to do that. So you have to think about, all right, Gressel taking up a bigger chunk, and would that be just, let's say for now, he goes into the Nagbe slot. Okay, if the money's roughly the same, I'm not worried about getting down to the dollar, but just roughly, there you go. Now you have the Merrim slot open. Heineman would take up more, and he's out of contract in June, so you'd have to, 1, acquire him, 2, sign him to a new deal, so he might take up that spot. So that's why some of the maneuvering has to happen. That's why a player like Florentin Pogba, at the money we're talking about on him, it might not be possible to bring him back. It just might not make financial sense. That's why it's not as easy as just saying, like, oh, I like this player, he should stay. These are the realities of it. And in a cap league, this stuff does come into play, and it can be difficult.
I'm trying to look for, a lot of folks have been discussing the Chicago Fire logo.
Well, hold those. We're going to take a quick break. We'll get into those reactions here in just a second. So hang out with us. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Last segment, hour one. Soccer Down here, November 22nd. We are on the verge of waiver and re-entry processes in Major League Soccer. We'll break down the rules for that to kick off hour number two, because there are players in all facets of player movement in MLS that could be very interesting to keep an eye on. Let's get back into the Twitter timeline, though, because there are a lot of takes on a Friday.
Yes. First one is from Greenville Triumph Weekly contributor Chris Ashley, GVLsoccer.com. He says he'll start the movement, and he's already starting hashtags of Gosselin and Okonkwo to GTSC.
Hey, I mean, that's a smart play. And, I mean, I would think this has happened in baseball and hockey where, you know, it's not a minor league system here, I know, but you have a player who is, you know, part of a, you know, big club, big team, fans like them. They're not quite able to stick at the top level, but they go to a team nearby that might have a lot of fans that overlap, and everybody's pretty happy.
Shiva has a roster question.
No thoughts on that?
Do you see? Oh, no, I'm with you. No, I'm all for it. You have, if Chris has started this movement, and it gives
I don't know
folks,
if Chris has control of the checkbook for Greenville Triumph.
No.
First off, so
we'll check with the Irwins on that. Yeah, Chris has to check with the Irwins.
Yeah,
but no, if you can bring in players that you know from geographic closeness that are going to be a part of things, it'll give folks from that first club, the fans of the first club, chance to go see them. And, you know, if you want to go see a drive, or if there's a chance to see them close by, then you're going to do that. So Chris Ashley gets full credit for the hashtags.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'd tell you the other one that would make a lot of sense there, and it goes back to what we were saying about Kevin Kratz. You know, if you want to start and offer him the possibility, and I know Greenville's, you know, figuring out the youth system and academy and all that, if you want to bring a player like Kevin Kratz in with that as an idea of getting him into the flow of coaching, he'd be a great addition for that kind of club.
Yeah, could you imagine Kratz learning with Harksey?
Yeah, I mean, you have two players who have great experience in their careers that are different. You know, I mean, Harks didn't play in Germany. He doesn't have that background, so it would help him. And then all the experience that Harks had playing in England and in MLS, that's going to help Kratz in his development. Harks would know the U.S. side and all that. It's just, it all makes a lot of sense. Like, I could really see that working well, or that type of move working very well. Because in addition to Greenville, you know, there's Tormenta, there's Chattanooga Red Wolves. There are lots of different options nearby, and that's in the League One side, USL Championship level as well, with Birmingham, with Memphis, you know, with Charleston, with Charlotte. There's lots of possibilities for these guys to stay in the region if they so choose.
Speaking of League One, Connor Antley signs with Indy 11 yesterday.
Yeah, and a transfer fee went to Tormenta, which is very good to see. that's the idea of League One. I mean, Connor Antley was a player who didn't necessarily have a spot to move into at a top level, and he had an unbelievable year in League One and now moves up to the championship. And Tormenta is rewarded for their work in developing him. That's how it should be. It's really good. Like, this is great. And these things need to happen more often.
News from the USL Championship real quick. OKC Energy have now appointed John Pasquarella as their new head coach. That just came across the wires. But
previous assistant of Minnesota United. That's the important part, because I don't think many people know Pasquarella's name.
Right. Ricky Ricardo with another roster question. Could BWP be a potential fit on this team as Joseph's backup? Does he fit the style of play that Frank DeBoer wants?
I don't know if he does. And the biggest thing when you get into that is he ready to just be a number 2 and not start? I don't know if that's the case. What kind of money would he be wanting for whatever role he's going to be? Would you be able to make that work? Because he'd be an expensive player with what he's done. That's not always easy either. I don't think he's the right fit. I just don't know if you can make it work across the board, but would you like to have a player like that coming off the bench? Yes, absolutely. That might be a tough one to pull off.
Shiva wanted to know if you saw PT, Barco, Joseph, and Tito all starting all at the same time, or if we keep Tito, will he always be a super sub?
Yeah, you can. I mean, it gets back to what do you do with Gressel, what do you do with Villalba in a lineup? Because if you're in a 4-3-3 and Joseph is your number 9, on your left side, off what we've seen, it's been Barco with Pitti as the number 10. I could flip them and be happy too. Tito on the right or Gressel on the right. If Gressel's not there, is he a central midfielder? Because I don't think he's a right back. So that's going to be what it comes down to. And that's going to be the tough decision that has been there, honestly, from day one. This is not a new debate. How do you get the two of them on the field together in terms of Villalba and Gressel? In a 3-5-2, you can't get all of them on the field easily either, because you have Joseph up top. You have a second forward that could be Barco or Pitti or Villalba. You have a number 10 that could be Barco or Pitti. And you have a right wing back that could be Gressel. All right? You don't really have Tito as a wing back ideally in that setup. I know it was tried at Yankee Stadium. You're talking about a different field there. It's not quite the same wing-back type of role, and it didn't work anyway. So there's not a lot of different ways to make it work. So that factors into the long-term decision-making, too, of what is the lineup going to look like? What is the depth chart going to look like? What is the way this team's going to play look like? It could be a rotation. It could be some games it's Tito, some games it's Gressel. It could be Gressel sometimes in the middle of the field instead. Does Gressel come into the middle and play in the number 8 role, the box-to-box role where Nagbe was before? It's possible. He's played it before. He's good there. I don't know if he is as impactful there, because you want to give him the freedom to drift out wide and put in those longer crosses and passes from the wings. So how do you make it work? It's just not easy. It's just not easy with this group that you have, and that's the challenge for Frank DeBoer. We'll keep talking about it in the offseason, because I'm curious to see how you manage that again going into year 4 when it's been, complicated probably from day one. So we'll get into all of that and more in hour number 2. Hang out with us. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky and Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2. Soccer Down Here, closing out the week on a Friday. It's November 22nd. Getting ready for the Copa Libertadores final tomorrow afternoon. River Plate fans took a 3-day bus trip to Lima, Peru for this game. There's a huge number of fans who were tweeting their progress across South America to Lima for this match because it just means more. Yes. The SEC's got nothing on South American soccer. Sorry, Southeastern Conference. Tomorrow we'll be watching the match over with our friends at the Brewhouse Cafe. It's on BN Sports, on Fanatis or Fubo TV or however you get BN. But we'll also be watching it over at the Brewhouse Cafe. If you want to come join us, should be, just a great, great match. I'm really looking forward to it because it is a team in Flamengo that hasn't lost in 25, and they've played like 11 billion matches this season in Brazil because they have a state league, a national league, cup competition, Copa Libertadores. They're playing every day, it feels like. And then River Plate, who's the defending champions. And Marcelo Gallardo just seems to win trophies. And, he might be trying to win trophies in Miami next year. And Michelle Kaufman from the Miami Herald wrote that this morning in her updates on Inter Miami's progress, that all signs point to Gallardo as the manager in Miami. We'll have to wait and see till after tomorrow's final. There are still some games in the Superliga season for River Plate, but you start to see a lot of movement in Argentina on players and managers in December as the season prepares to go into its summer break. So stay tuned. We'll be talking about the Libertadores on Soccer Over There next week. We'll talk a little bit about it on the Crumpets and Espresso, mate, and Iron Brew or Haggis, whichever we decide to put in this week, on our weekend preview that'll be coming out later today. Also, reminders, Reformation Brewing, December 4th in Canton. We'll be hanging out with our friends from the Cherokee Soccer Association, raising money for their youth soccer programs, but also talking with them about their club, talking about everything going on around the Atlanta United world and just the soccer world in general. Should be a really fun conversation. For those of you who weren't able to come out to Wild Heaven this week, that podcast will be going up this weekend as well. Or if you want to relive it, that'll be going up this weekend in a couple different parts. So be on the lookout for that. If you have the SDH app, you'll get it directly. If you are subscribed in all of your pod catchers to SDH programming, you will get it there too. Go check out our store at teespring.com. Get some shirts.
Yes.
We've got Mucha Plata shirts. We've got the Panqueques shirts. If you've watched the Maradona documentary, you remember the chant they were chanting at the press who was on the plane with them as they're going back to Argentina, because nobody in the media thought Argentina would win that World Cup, and the players reminded everybody of what they thought after they won it. So all that's on the store. There's stickers, there's sweatshirts, there's T-shirts, all kinds of stuff. So teespring.com, search for Soccer Down Here. We'll post you links as we go as well. But thanks to everybody who's already picked up mugs and sweatshirts and such. We do have scarves as well. Shiva came and met me as I was getting ready for 92.9 on Wednesday to pick up her scarf. Nice. You can do that. You can just send us a message and say, hey, we want to pick up a scarf. Where can we find you? Or we can send it to you. They're $20. If you want us to send you one, it's an extra $5, and you can send us PayPal payment, and we'll take care of it. We'll get the scarf out, and you'll probably get it the next day or the day after. It's pretty quick. So thanks to everybody who has supported the show in all of these different formats, because all of these different things help us grow and help us do more stuff. I will give you a teaser as to a project that I'm hoping the first edition will hit your apps and podcatchers next week. I have dug in pretty deep on the best teams ever in Major League Soccer, since next year is the 25th anniversary, and we will be counting them down as we get ready for the 2020 season. So I'm working on the honorable mention list first off, because, there's more than 100, because every list has an honorable mention list, right? So
yes.
The teams that won a trophy, and I think all of them that won a trophy in this case are teams that won the Open Cup but had a bad regular season, and teams that made a final that were not one of the best 100 teams. Even though they won a trophy and even though they made a final, they're not one of the best 100 teams, and there are reasons for that. And that will be coming out on the app and on the podcatchers next week. So be on the lookout. And those will be coming out periodically as we get ready for 2020. All the stuff on the SDH network coming up.
Yes. Odds checker from now, since we're in November, I guess it's Thanksgiving table stuff.
We've been doing that for a while now, John.
Yes. Oh, I don't know if we're still there. We're doing other things because we're getting closer to Black Friday.
Thanksgiving hasn't happened yet, John.
So we have the numbers for Copa Libertadores.
Okay.
And this is a combination of Fox Bet, 888 Sport, and Bet365. Flamengo to win outright, plus 113 to plus 120. River Plate to win outright, plus 229 to plus 250.
Just to win.
Just to win.
That's changed a good bit.
Yeah. It was Flamengo went from minus 137 to the numbers that we're talking about now, and the draw option. So we're just 90 minutes. If you're just thinking 90 minutes, plus 215 to plus 210. So that's what we're looking at.
So I would take the sweet potato souffle and put it on the draw option, and then I will take the I'll take the cherry pie and put it on River Plate to win. And not just because they're both red, but cherry pie can be good. It can be bad. It's, for me, in the pie rankings, it's not at the very top. So I'll risk it because I'm not 100% sure the River Plate gets the win here. But I do have the inability to pick against them because of Gallardo in big games. So I'll take the cherry pie, which would be, man, would that be like 3, maybe 4 in my pie power rankings? It's not the top, so I'll take the cherry pie and put it on it.
So what's your pie power ranking?
I'm trying to think. Apple's the top. I mean, and if you want to get really specific, like, you'd probably have the Dutch apple pie as the number 1, and then apple pie maybe as the 2. Pumpkin pie might be a big competitor for the 2, and then cherry might be 3, 4 if we're going to subdivide the apple pies.
Yeah. For me, it's lemon meringue, cherry, and then apple.
And I'm thinking, like, Thanksgiving pies. I mean, like key lime pie would be in there just in general pie rankings,
Yes,
but I don't think
true.
key lime pie for
No,
Thanksgiving. I don't really think
I don't think of it
meringue
for
either
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. So I
usually for me, you'd go to the Edwards store growing up, get a big lemon meringue pie, and have that as a part of the deal. You'd have a lemon meringue and
never
apple
did the
on
lemon
the
meringue Thanksgiving pie.
Yes,
I mean lemon meringue. No, it's a good pie. It's not. I think I'd put cherry ahead of lemon meringue though. I'm not a meringue fan.
Huh?
It's always too much meringue.
Edwards had it right because they had
like
the graham cracker crust.
Yeah, it's good. Too much meringue. Always killed it for me.
Oh, disagree. Circle gets the square.
Meringue's just kind of there, and when there's too much of it, it's distracting. So I'll leave the meringue off to the side, and I'll eat the lemon. So I guess I would go lemon icebox pie? Is that the one without the meringue?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay, I'd go there before I'd go lemon meringue.
Or is that the one that's just freezer based, where Edwards lemon meringue is more refrigerated?
No, it's not about that, I don't think. But anyway, for a Thanksgiving pie that I'm putting on this, since we are thematically correct here, because Thanksgiving is next week, I would go cherry pie on River Plate to win, because I think it'll be an extra time. And I'll take the sweet potato souffle on the draw, because I feel somewhat confident in this going 120 minutes at least.
Jared is letting us know that he has thoughts about the rankings of Thanksgiving food.
Well, he can give his thoughts at any time if he would like to do so. I don't know where he is going on this. I don't know if he's disagreeing with our thoughts. I wasn't ranking Thanksgiving food all the way. I'm just ranking pies. Argue about pies, bring it.
Yeah, really? Because that'll be a heated discussion, especially next week. We have folks who are talking about Atlanta United on the timeline. We also have a lot of folks talking about Chicago, their inability to get players, get rewarded for letting players go, and the logo. So we have a bunch of that. Do you want to go into your waiver stuff first and wait, or how do you want to play it?
Yeah, let's give you the rules on this for everybody who is still listening after the heated pie debate. These are the rules that you have to know as to what's coming next. So MLS will publish the lists of who is available for what option here today. I think it's at 1:00. I have a pretty good idea of who will be where, and we can get into that real quick, but the rules of what's going to happen next, so the players who are not on a roster are coming back to a team after all these contract announcements. Waivers. So the waivers are players who don't qualify for free agency, don't qualify for the re-entry draft, generally young players under the age of 23, or players between 23 and 28 years old that haven't been in the league very long. So there's a few interesting players that are going to go through the waiver process. That is on Monday at 3:00. Cincinnati has the top pick. Atlanta picks 21st. A lot of teams will pass, but some will jump on this. Now, clubs that claim players in this process, if they are out of contract, the club that picks them has to issue a genuine offer. So let's follow the Gaetan experiment along. If Cincinnati says, "Oh yeah, I'd like to pick up Nico Gaetan's rights," they have to offer him a genuine offer because his option was not picked up. In the waiver process, they don't have to pick up the option. Re-entry, they do in stage 1. Waiver, they don't. They have to issue a genuine offer. So they can't say, like, "Oh, yeah, let's pick up his rights, so then, if he comes back to the league, we can get him." No, that doesn't work. So they have to they have to issue a genuine offer that is, I guess, approved as a genuine offer by the league. Then they would hold on to his rights. All right. So you can't just squat on a player, basically, through the waiver process. Re-entry. Okay, this is over 2 stages, and the way you qualify for re-entry, players who are at least 23 years old, have a minimum of 3 years of MLS experience, whose contract options were not exercised by their clubs. They're available at their option salary for 2019. Players who are at least 25 with a minimum of 4 years of MLS experience who are out of contract and whose club does not wish to re-sign them at their previous salary. So not options not being exercised, but players who are out of contract and they're not re-signed at their previous salary who are 25 and a minimum of 4 years. They're available for at least their 2019 salary. That is where the offer starts. Okay. So, stage 1, you can't draft your own players, first off. You have to exercise the option, or, in those cases of players who are out of contract, extend a bona fide offer. And that's to start at their 2019 salary. Players with option years left in their contract are automatically added to the club's roster who drafted them. So if you pick up, who's a player whose option was not picked up, let's say Justin Merrim. If Miami, who has the top pick, picks up Justin Merrim, they are saying, we are picking up his option. He's on their roster immediately. Players who are out of contract that they pick up, like, let's say, Breck Shea, but Breck Shea's a free agent, so he doesn't fit. Anybody who is just completely out of contract, then they have to make that bona fide offer, and it has to start at their 2019 salary. So that's why all this is very restrictive for players to move. These are the things that the new CBA might clarify a little bit more, hopefully. Stage 2, so players who aren't picked in the re-entry draft stage 1, you go through it again, and in that one, the drafting club is required to make a genuine offer to the player within 7 days. So you can then you're not bound to picking up the option. You're not bound to offering them something starting at their 2019 salary. It's kind of like the waiver process at that point. You're then able to just make a genuine offer. And then players who aren't picked in all of these processes, then they become free agents. So there you go. It's complicated. That's what's coming next. The league will clarify who goes into what pot of rejoining teams in the league. Free agents are players who are 28 years old and have been in the league for 8 years. So Jeff Larentowicz qualifies as a free agent. Breck Shea qualifies as a free agent. Mikey Ambrose does not. Mikey Ambrose would go through the re-entry process. And we'll see what happens. Free agents, goalkeepers, for example, Matt Lampson, Tyler Derrick, both available as free agents. Waivers, you've got some Luis Robles as well, Bobby Shuttleworth. Waivers, you've got guys like Greg Ranjit Singh, who was very good in Louisville, played a couple of games for Orlando. Ben Lundgaard, who spent time on loan, didn't appear in MLS this year. He's 23. Evan Loro, I think, would go through the re-entry process because he was on the Red Bulls roster for 3 years, even though I don't think he ever played for the Red Bulls in MLS. He didn't this past year. Played a lot for Red Bulls, too. He's a really good young goalkeeper. He's one that I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens with him. Clement Diop, who Atlanta United fans will remember for his absurd saves in Montreal late in the season.
Yes.
He played 2 games for the Impact. He'll go through the re-entry process. He's 26. Cody Cropper's 26. He'll go through the re-entry process. 2 goalkeepers still young in their career that'll be available to teams. There's a lot of really intriguing players available around the league, and players who played a lot, like not guys who, were at the bottom of a roster and you didn't see very much. Donnie Toya played 2,300 minutes. He just misses out on free agency at 27. He'll go through re-entry. That's a player that will end up somewhere. Who else played a lot of minutes last year? Minor Figueroa, at 36 years old, played 2,200 minutes. Would somebody potentially bring him back for another year? He goes through re-entry. Drew Moore's a free agent. 35, and he's had a lot of injuries, but could you get him on as a backup center back? And with his experience, he played over 1,000 minutes last year, even with the injuries. You keep going. Lamine Sané, a player that we didn't think would really work out in Orlando. He wasn't bad. 32 years old. He played 2,200 minutes. He goes through the waiver process. Roman Torres goes through re-entry, 1,300 minutes at 33. Are you going to take a flyer on him? Tommy Smith, 29 years old, goes through the waiver process because he was only with Colorado for 2 years. 2,400 minutes in the league. Big, strong center back. Steven Beitashour, right back, free agent. Played nearly 2,000 minutes for LAFC. Jordan Harvey's a free agent. He played 2,500 minutes for LAFC. He's 35, but he's a free agent. Edgar Castillo played nearly 1,700 minutes. He goes through the waiver process at 33 years old because he's only been in the league for a couple of years. Pogba would go through the waiver process because he was only here for 1 year. He played almost 1,000 minutes. Who else jumps out to you? AJ De La Garza, a veteran on the back line who can play anywhere on the back line, played about 2,000 minutes. He's 32 years old, mostly on the right side, but he can play in the middle. He can play on the left in a pinch. There'll be teams lining up for AJ De La Garza and his versatility for sure. Bakary Sagna, he played 2,100 minutes last year at 36 for Montreal, and he was really good. Does somebody take a flyer on him? Real Salt Lake is still trying to figure out what's going to happen with Kyle Beckerman. They don't have a deal with him yet. He would be a free agent if they don't re-sign him. And even at 37 years old, he played 2,300 minutes. And if you listen to SiriusXM-FC and Brian Dunseth, who calls RSL matches, he says Beckerman might be the fittest player on the team. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him continue to play next year. I think everybody in Utah would hope that it's with RSL, and that's what you'd like to see happen, is him finish out his career there. But if they can't come to a deal and he wants to keep playing, I think he definitely has the ability to keep playing. We've already mentioned Gaetan. 2,000 minutes was just very, very good all year long. Here's one for you. A lot of Atlanta United fans know and love Will Johnson, free agent. 32 years old, played 1,700 minutes. And I think if Will Johnson made the decision to move from central midfield to right back, there's teams he could start for next year. He was good in that role when Orlando used him there. I think playing in the middle might be a little bit past him now, but Johnson will play in the league next year, I think. Medunjanin, we talked about. He goes through the waiver process. Played every minute last year. 34 years old. If he wants to stay in MLS, there will be teams that will happily sign him up. I'll tell you one that's really intriguing to me is Uri Russell, another Orlando player. Re-entry player. He'll go through the re-entry process. 27 years old. Played nearly 1,500 minutes. Was outstanding with Sporting Kansas City in their era of winning MLS Cup in 2013. Went to Europe, came back. He's had some injuries, and that's going to be the question mark on him. But if he's healthy, he can step into any team in the league and make them better. He's that good. I really like Rosell. Alexander Katai, same thing. He can step into any team in this league and make it better. 28 years old. He played 2,100 minutes last year. He's one of the best 1v1 players in the league. He goes through the waiver process. Sebastian Salcedo is one that surprised me at 22. He goes through the waiver process, 1,200 minutes, 22 years old, and capable of spectacular. He's inconsistent, and that's going to be the drawback on him. But if you can get Salcedo finding a level of consistency and playing to the level that we think he's capable of, that's a really good potential pickup. Harry Shipp goes through re-entry. We talked about him a lot with the expansion draft process. Miguel Ibarra goes through the waiver process. Another player who I think will be in the league and can be in a good spot next year if the right situation materializes. I'll be curious to see if anybody takes a flyer on Marco Fabian. You know, the rumors are he goes back to Chivas, but does anybody in MLS say we want to pick him up through the waiver process and bring him in? It's definitely possible. Juan Agudelo goes through re-entry.
That was another one that I had.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where he ends up. Christian Nemeth goes through the re-entry process. 30 years old. He's had some injuries, but he's scored goals fairly consistently. What kind of money would he be looking for? And that's the question when it comes to Nemeth. Bradley Wright Phillips, we've talked about. Nemanja Nikolic. I mean, you're talking about the waiver process, but he scored double-digit goals again this year. you kind of forget that because Chicago's been so bad, but this is a Golden Boot winner from 2017, and he scored double-digit goals in other years. Like, he can score goals. Would he be willing at 31 to take less money and be a second option for a team? Maybe. There were rumors that he wanted to stay in the United States and stay in MLS, so keep an eye on Nikolic. There's a lot of intriguing options, and then there's wild cards like Christian Coleman, who had an ACL injury, Breck Shea, who's coming off of a knee injury, guys who are young and didn't see the field very much for teams, but maybe in the right spot could be a worthwhile pickup. Marcus Epps is one that I've always been impressed with, but hasn't lived up to it yet. Cam Lindley never could break through in Orlando. He's 22. You're talking about a former U.S. Youth International at 22. Somebody, he'll play. I just wonder where he'll end up. Does somebody take a flyer on him in the waiver process, or do they wait and bring him into a camp? Christian Higuita goes through the re-entry process because he's out of contract. There's a lot of different possibilities. John Baccaro was let go by Toronto. He's one that is very talented, but it's going to take the right fit for him. Carter Manley, a right back who was with Minnesota, played one game, spent time on loan this year. There's a lot of talent that will be available and be moving around the league in the next couple weeks through these different processes.
Yeah, there were another couple of guys that I had circled. I had Gaetan and Katai and Agudelo and Robles. Maloney out of Columbus.
Maloney's versatile. One thing about Maloney that was said was he would be kind of like we talked about with Ambrose. He would be one of those guys that would probably be moving from a supplemental roster spot to a senior roster spot, which changes the conversation a bit. I think he's worth it. I think he's a player who can be a good fit in that situation.
Kellen Rowe at RSL. Just taking a flyer on him.
Maybe. I'd have to see a little bit there.
And then two dudes who are a little north in the ages, Failhaber and Sinovic at Sporting.
Failhaber's risky-er, but if you have the right team and you're not asking him to play every week, yes. Sinovic, I think, is a guy who can start in this league still. I do. He's not spectacular. He's solid.
And then you'd mentioned Baccaro from Toronto, but Ashton Morgan was also on their list.
Yeah, Ashton Morgan's a possibility too. He's another one who could be a good fit in the right spot, and if it's as a starter or as a reserve left back, for sure. There's plenty of talent available, whether you're talking established guys, whether you're talking guys who you think can do more in a new spot, or guys who just haven't had an opportunity to prove themselves yet. There's a lot of talent that's going to be available.
Chris Hutchison, in his opinion, Atlanta United needs a couple strong midfielders and a center back or two who might be available to fill the needs. We've been going through that this morning. He says, in his opinion, someone currently playing in MLS would be a good start as they already know this league, and he offered Edward Atuesta as a name.
You're not getting a best 11 player from LAFC. That's not happening. I think Atuesta's been talked about as potentially going to Europe anyway, but LAFC would never let him go to an Atlanta United. I mean, this is a best 11 player in the league. So you got to be realistic with some of the moves you're thinking. I mean, it's not that everybody's on the table. And honestly, I don't know if he is exactly the kind of number 6 that I think would upgrade this team. I don't know if you need a couple guys in the middle because you have Mo Adams. You have potentially Julian Gressel playing in the middle. It sounds like you're going to have Emerson Heineman. You have Eric Remedi, and you could potentially have Jeff Florenowitz. So that's 5 guys in the middle of the field for 3 spots. All right. I do think a number 6 is critical for this team to kind of take that next jump, the right kind of number 6 if you're going to play in a 4-3-3 primarily. So that's probably going to be a move from outside the league. I don't think there is a player within the league that would be that guy that would give you enough defensively, and you look at 2 players who give you the other side of it that are great in the passing game, in Atuesta and Medunjanin, for example, but neither one are strong enough defensively to play solo. And if you want to play a 4-3-3 that might look more like a 4-1-2-3 or a 4-1-4-1, where you can really go a lot. You need a 6 who can stay home and defend on his own. And Medunjanin and Atuesta are not that. And I don't think there is a player like that in the league that you would be able to get. So teams aren't going to give that guy up very easily. So you're probably going to have to go outside to find that player.
2 other Atlanta United thoughts, and the rest of the timeline is looking at logos and realignment and Chicago, both on the field and off. Emery Russell, and we've been getting into this morning, he said, based on the rest of the MLS roster news from yesterday, is there anyone that stands out that Atlanta could pick up?
A lot of the names we just went through, are definitely possible. Like, there's a lot of the forwards that I think are potential to be that backup forward. The bigger, riskier backup forward options would be to get a Nemanja Nikolic to take that kind of deal, to get a Juan Agudelo to potentially take that kind of deal, maybe a Juan Fernando Caicedo who's going to be available to take that kind of deal. I don't know if I'd go for like a younger guy like a Brian Wright or a Jordan Hamilton, just because you've had that. I think you probably need a veteran there to give you a different kind of look. So those are the 3 that come to mind. When you look in the midfield, if you're looking at depth, and you got to remember too, I think it's easy to say like, oh, well, you can get these starters here. Like, these are guys who were let go from their clubs for a reason. Some of the reasons could be incorrect, but these are not generally all-stars that are going to be available, with the exception of maybe Gaetan and Katai. These are guys who, you have to take with a grain of salt. But you look at potential depth options. Let's go to outside back. Maloney is a possibility. De La Garza is a possibility, a veteran who can play anywhere on the back line. Eric Miller would be a possibility for that as well, who can play anywhere on the back line. If you're just looking in the middle at possibilities to add to your depth there, guys who jump out to me, because you're probably going to want to go domestic with this type of pickup. You don't want to use an international slot on it. Forrest Lasso, Shane O'Neill. That's probably the 2. Kofi Apare, potentially. Said I drew more the injuries. There's just so many questions on that. And a guy like Alex DeJean, I just didn't see enough of in Orlando. O'Neill, I liked him in Colorado a lot. When he first went to Europe, he stood out. You can take maybe his year in Orlando and put it to the side because of what you've seen outside of that. Jonathan Campbell would be another possibility, who was reserved for Seattle this year. Alex Croniale, who never broke through as a homegrown in Columbus, has played in USL Championship on loan. Those are all possibilities for depth in the middle. And then on the left side, if you don't pick up like a De La Garza or Maloney, who can play on both sides of the outside, you're looking at potentially an Ashton Morgan, a Danilo Acosta, a young left back who just hasn't quite gotten over the hump. Played a decent bit in 18 in Real Salt Lake, was in Orlando last year on loan, and it just didn't really work out. Edgar Castillo would be an older veteran that could help spell and teach George Bello some, but how is he ready to not be a regular starter? And that's going to be the question, because it's Bello's spot if he stays healthy at left back next year.
Then the last Atlanta United question. Michael had joined late, and from the presser yesterday, he just wanted the Tito update in 2020.
He's under contract, so he's under contract. That's the update right now. Like, are there still possibilities for things to happen with trades and transfers and such? Always. You have a transfer window opening up in January around the world, so things are definitely possible, but he's under contract. So that had been a question mark coming in. I'm not sure where reporting got complicated there, but he's under contract. Don't know if he's under contract past 2020. LGP is under option past 2020. Those were the biggest revelations in contract lengths for me.
The rest of the timeline, other than Joe Bost ranking his pies.
Oh, I gotta bring something out from our good friend Jarrett Smith, who says apple pie is trash.
That's
trash.
Sacrilege.
Trash is what Jarrett Smith said. Apple pie is.
So at Jarrett_Smith.
If you don't like apple pie, that's fine. But to call it trash is a very, very spicy take. I mean, I'm expecting him to be like standing at the table and pounding his fist down on the table, yelling apple pie is trash. It is that spicy.
Knife in one hand, closed fist, fork in the other hand, other closed fist, just pounding out both sides of the plate.
Yes, and he's complaining about pumpkin pie and whatever. Pumpkin pie is definitely not for everybody. I like pumpkin pie, so
not a pumpkin pie guy.
Stuff it, both of y'all. He's getting into fancy stuff, not fancy stuff, but different stuff. I was trying to keep it pretty basic pies that everybody has at Thanksgiving. Iron skillet chocolate pie does sound amazing. It's not at every Thanksgiving table. That is not a common Thanksgiving pie.
Joe Bost says his great-grandmother made him lemon icebox pie when he was a little guy. Yes, it was around the time dinosaurs went extinct, and his pie ranking. Meringue sucks. Have to disagree with you, sir. Pecan, coconut, chocolate, chess, and pumpkin is 5. What is chess pie?
It's not something I've had a ton of. I want to make sure I get it right here. I don't want to be
consulting Joe Bost
on
this
my
as
chess
well.
Pie. So it is a dessert characteristic of the southern United States cuisine, particularly in the state of Virginia. Maybe that's why I'm not completely up to speed on chess pie. Not a Virginia guy. So what is it exactly? Okay, I was not thinking of this as chess pie, so I'm completely oblivious to chess pie. I apologize to the chess pie lovers. But no, I've never been around chess pie.
And Chris Hutchison also does remind us that at Jarrett_Smith likes candy corn.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. That definitely brings all of this back into understanding here. So, yeah, that's ridiculous. That's just absolutely ridiculous. It's not my fault, Jarrett. You've been eating bad apple pie.
Really?
Meh. Anyway, all right. Let's move on.
Thomas Gwynn from yesterday's discussion of conference formats and expansion. If you're going to go to 3 conferences at 30, you might as well go on and go there at 27 and 2021. It gives you the most flexibility in dealing with 3 Western teams joining consecutively.
I don't think you're going to be at 27 in 2021. I think Charlotte's going to come in 2021 with Austin. So if you don't, yes, that would be the best way to solve the odd number issue. I agree. But I don't think that's going to come up.
Tafka, and this is where the rest of the discussion on the timeline, we've had a lot of folks looking at logos, and they're looking at you, Chicago. Stalagmite, Stalactite, FC.
That was the best. Richmond Kickers came in for the win on that. Wow.
Yep. That was the.
Well, the other thing is the new Chicago Fire logo even brought back the rumored USL Chicago team Twitter account from the dead, and said we don't have a logo and it's better than this. Like people were lining up to take shots at the Chicago Fire with this logo,
and a lot of folks are in the timeline that want to take shots at either the logo or Chicago in general after letting go of Gaetan and Katai. Tafka ranking the expansion rebrand era crest designs, and he's trying to be unbiased. Here's his top 10. From 10 to 1. Number 10, he's got Chicago. 9, Nashville. 8, FC
I like
Cincinnati.
Nashville better than Chicago. Let's slow down. I like Chicago. I like Nashville better than Chicago. Yes. All right. What was next?
FC Cincinnati. Their USL version was better.
I actually like Nashville better than Cincinnati, but I'll put Cincinnati above Chicago.
7, Orlando.
I like Orlando's logo. I'll have it as the best of the 4 we've mentioned so far.
6, LAFC.
I like Orlando's better.
5, NYCFC.
Yep, that's the best one out of what we said so far.
4, Miami.
Yep, that's the best one out of what we've said so far.
3, Atlanta United. The design literally sparked the best nickname in MLS. #extra credit.
If Miami gets the nickname of the Herons because of their logo, that they will be able to compete with that, and I hope that they do.
2, Austin.
Ooh, I have to disagree. Austin would go down the charts to the
8, FC Cincinnati.
Well, it's your opinion. I would have them. I'd have them in the 6-7 range. I like the colors. I don't like the actual logo as much. The color does bail it out some. So, yeah, 6-7. They're somewhere ahead of. They're ahead of Cincinnati.
Yeah, and his number 1 is Minnesota United.
I'm going to drop that down a little bit. So I would go Atlanta, and yeah, I am probably biased. It's okay. We'll take Atlanta out of it for now then. So I'll go Miami. I'll go... Would I put Minnesota next? Maybe next. Miami is the best one out of that batch for me outside of Atlanta. I really love what Miami did with their branding.
Prophet of Mars 1, DMM, says Austin's logo's trash. Miami's logo and palette are great by comparison. And while I don't love it, Orlando's MLS logo is miles better than their weird 3-lion head thing they had going in USL. Chicago missed the mark, but Nashville's logo is safety yellow. It's awful.
I don't think it's awful, but it's not as good as a bunch of the others we've mentioned. Austin's, I don't think it's trash. The palette is what rescues it for me, but it could have been better too. Miami's great. Miami just did great work with theirs.
Stunner about the front office in Chicago. He says maybe it wasn't enough to just let Paunovic go. When's the last time we remember the Fire front office doing good business?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I guess getting Nico Gaitan and Alexander Katai on a free would be that to a degree, but they moved on from Sean Johnson, and they haven't really replaced him in a strong way since he left at the end of 2016. They reportedly tried to get Juan Fernando Quintero multiple times and couldn't get the deal done. So that's not good. They've always talked about, well, we try really hard to get these players and we make offers and we get outbid. Well, that's not good. So I guess getting Gaitan on a free to begin with, but then deciding not to play him, and then not developing your young players and just moving them on. And yeah, there's not a lot good to say.
Stunner follows that up by saying that he's aware Miami just grabbed Lee Wynn, but if you're Miami or Nashville, might you be salivating over Qatar Gaitan as those lower cost but more reliable offensive pieces? Also, the logo is really underwhelming for a rebrand that they needed to pop in order to rebirth the club in Chicago.
Yeah, they needed to pop. They didn't need something that was just meh. They needed something that was wow. Gaitan wouldn't fit for Miami now with Lee Wynn unless they want to wheel and deal. Nashville should absolutely hop on Gaitan. I think he'd be a great fit for them. The question would be, can they make a midfield work with Mukhtar, Gaitan, McCarty, Godoy, Jones? What is it out of that group? And are you back to where I've talked about with Nashville? It feels like players become available and they're like, ooh, I like that. Let's go get it. But it might not necessarily fit because they already have players who play those roles. So if you're going to wheel and deal a little bit, maybe, but the question for me with Nashville is if they're going to play a 4-3-3, you go get Katai straight away. I think Miami is expecting to have, well, you'll have Pellegrini on the left side, and you're putting resources into him, so you're not going to go there if you're Miami on either one. I just don't think. Nashville could benefit from it because they're not crazy expensive designated players, but I don't know how Nashville's going to play. If they play a 3-5-2, I think both are difficult to fit. If they play a 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 diamond or whatever, then you start having some possibilities. And if Gary Smith isn't like married to playing one way and these guys are available, then yeah, I would go get Katai because I think he's a game changer. He's younger and he's a game changer. I would go jump on Alexander Katai.
Tafka also reminds us all that Atlanta made over $1 million on the Carmona sale. Other clubs don't pay attention, it seems.
Yeah, that's a really good shout because that's the kind of deal that Chicago needs to be doing here. You're not trying to get rich off of a deal with Gaetan or Katai if you really just need to clear the space. Get something. And if you can't convert, money to allocation money until after acquisition costs are paid, well, both of these guys were available on a free, reportedly. So, okay, you're not worried about that. If you have to take their salary out of whatever you get, well, then you're getting money to pump back into another designated player. Fine. But to come up with these arguments about like why you would let these guys go on a free and not make a move for them, if you can't find a buyer at a small amount for Gaetan or Katai, then you're not in the right business.
You're not looking hard enough.
You're not doing your job.
Nope. John Nason asks if there's any chance that Chicago Fire pull this bizarre badge like Leeds had to after the backlash they received.
No.
Too much marketing and just too much invested.
Yep.
Ricky Ricardo says it feels like the Fire changed their logo for the sake of change, and I don't think that was the way to go. They're definitely bringing that expansion team energy, end quote.
I don't even know if they're bringing that. I don't know what they're bringing. They just released another video of people wearing white T-shirts with the logo on it, and
can't do it.
Can't do what?
I can't purchase that. I will not have any Chicago Fire stuff.
Why was anybody telling you to purchase Chicago Fire stuff?
Well, that's what they're doing. They're sitting there, hey, look at our new logo, buy our stuff.
Well, you're not the market they're talking to. I would think not. I don't think you're out trying to buy Chicago Fire stuff in general, but
nope.
Some of it looks okay. Like, again, I think the thing is here, it's not that it's just complete and utter garbage. It's the fact that it's not an upgrade. And it's just not that great. It's okay. Nope. It's very meh. I don't like that they're getting away from their history of red. I don't like they're getting away from their history of the fire department kind of badge.
Yeah, Maltese cross, yeah.
I don't like that they're getting away from the basics of stuff. And it's just, you're not doing it because you came up with something great. You came up with something that's very meh. It's just there. It's okay. But in comparison, it's bad.
Susan Laurie is underwhelmed by the Chicago Fire logo on its own, but prefer it to the old one in use on shirts, stickers, and on the flag. I think the flag is great, simple but striking, should become quickly recognizable, so count me as a surprised fan of it.
Yeah, there's some elements of it that, yeah, you can do some cool things with it. I don't like that you went away from red really for no reason. I don't. I mean, I haven't heard a reason. Maybe they felt like there were too many red teams in the league. I don't know, but you went to navy, which is another color that a lot of teams use. It just, I don't know what you gained from changing it this way, and that's what you're trying to do when you are going to make this kind of move. Just, you're trying to upgrade, and I don't feel like they upgraded anything.
Yeah.
Andy Hollums says he might be in the minority who like the Crew rebrand, and he's not a fan of Nashville, much like Jarrett's opinion of apple pie. He thinks Nashville's logo is trash.
I don't think it's that bad, but it's not, in comparison, as good as Miami's. I did like the Crew rebrand. The Crew rebrand was better than the original. The Village people on the crest was not a good look for very long. So anything was better than that. I did like the checkerboard kind of addition into things. That was kind of cool and a little unique in the league. So yeah, I thought it was good. I thought the Crew changeover was good. That was one of the good things that Precourt did in his time there. Maybe one of the only things.
Then Thomas Gawain says, if you think Charlotte is coming in 2021, then you don't have the issue of East-West we were talking about yesterday. That'd mean 13-13 next year, and agreeing on the move of Chicago to the West. 14-14 in 21. Charlotte East, Austin leaves to go to the West, and then whatever happens with 30 and 22.
Then you're adding St. Louis and Sacramento, but then I think you're going to 3 10-team conferences. And then it's not as big of a deal that you're adding 2 teams that would be in the West because you're not East-West, you're East-Central-West.
Shiva agrees Miami and Atlanta are the best. It's not just the design, but the colors, too. Miami and Atlanta combine the colors very well and classy, in her opinion. NYC and Philly are next in line.
Yeah, Philly's a good call. I like their color palette. I think they can do more with it. I think they can definitely do more than they have with it, but I do like their palette a lot. And Atlanta, adding the gold to it was the element that I was kind of like, how is that going to look? How is that going to work? But I think they've done it in a good way. I still think they can do more with the gold in the palette. And it sounds like potentially this year with the secondary kit that has been rumored out there of being white and gold, that gold will be more prominent going forward. I think it's definitely a possibility on the table.
The Colonel, Morning Colonel, says even bad apple pie is okay with enough sharp cheddar on it. I've never heard that as an option.
You've never heard that? I've heard that. I'm not a fan of it. For me, bad apple pie would be rescued by vanilla ice cream.
Exactly.
But yes, I've heard that. It's just I'm not a fan of it.
I've never. To me, I think that's just too many conflicting things going on. And he says, 2, any ranking of pie that does not begin with pecan is flawed.
I'm not a then this is okay. Go ahead and at me.
I'm not either.
Well, we know you have bad food takes, John. This is nothing new.
I like apple pie. I like cherry pie. I like blueberry pie.
Those are very basic
meringue.
Food takes. Those are not. You're not on any limb there. It's a very thin limb.
I am the manila folder of food takes.
Yes. Except for the really bad ones. I guess this is my bad food take, especially being in the South. I'm not a pecan pie fan at all. Never happened. Never happened. Your bad takes are expected. People can yell at me about this. Go ahead. I'm not a fan.
And then the Colonel says chess pie is pretty much buttermilk pie with cornmeal, #down home, #whatever Friday # is.
That's what it sounded like when I was reading. I have never had it, so I can't speak on it. It was never a thing anywhere I've been, so I need to try this chess pie that you all are speaking of.
Michael Ruiz with a question. In the same vein as the Carmona transfer to Colo-Colo, when do we start seeing MLS clubs consistently transferring players to top South American clubs, especially in the $1 to $5 million range? I think there's a sweet spot for that market.
Yeah, I do too. I think the market as a whole still needs to mature a little bit because we're starting to see guys come to MLS from South American clubs. And I do think that there are the potential for some of those guys that come to MLS and don't make the eventual jump to Europe and then decide, you know what, I'm going to go back to South America. And at a range where they can afford to pay the transfer fee in that $1 to $5 million range. That's absolutely reasonable. I do think there's also potential for some of the Brazilian clubs that are spending bigger money to go after bigger players out of MLS. For me, it's still changing that perception of the quality of MLS. So players and clubs and leagues look at MLS and say, one, I want to go there, and then two, I want to buy from there players that are available because they can come in here and upgrade what I have. So the Carmona one was very interesting because of going back home for him, and he had one good year with Colo-Colo and then kind of fell off. That's maybe not the best advertisement for it, but you look at some guys, Latin players who are in that 25 to 30-year-old range who could go back to a club like Colo-Colo, who was going into Libertadores and needed to bolster their squad. Yeah, definitely. And clubs in places like Colombia and Chile and Ecuador that are not spending big money but could benefit from some of these veteran players coming in. I agree. I think there's definitely a market for that.
John Nason, how is it possible no news on the scheduling format for 2020 has trickled out to the Twitter?
Everybody got distracted by logos.
And then Joe Bost saying something that is probably, Captain Obvious today, that I have some strange food takes. Cheddar on apple pie is okay, but he agrees with the ice cream.
Yeah, I'll go ice cream. I'm not a giant fan of the cheddar and apple pie, but yeah, something I've definitely heard of.
Anything else on your sheet before we go for another week?
Let's see here. Couple players to keep an eye on in the rumor realm. Miguel Barbieri is a center back from Racing who is currently on loan at Rosario Central. Central had a $1.5 million option to buy 50% of his pass. It's looking unlikely that will happen, according to Guillermo Ferretti, a reporter in Rosario, and he's being linked to an MLS move. He's 26 years old. He's valued at just about $1 million on Transfermarkt. That is somewhat like the profile of a Leandro Gonzalez Pires. And you don't get players with that profile who come to MLS and perform at that level all that often, but that's the type of profile we're talking about with a Miguel Barbieri. So a regular but not a lockdown starter in the Superliga who might be able to make this jump and really upgrade his situation if he gets to the right club and the right type of environment. So keep an eye on Barbieri. A club has not been linked to him yet. Ferretti just had the link of an MLS potential move with Rosario Central balking on the buy option on his loan. Goalkeeper who was with LAFC in 2018, but mostly on loan with Orange County, Honduran national team goalkeeper Luis Lopez is being linked with a move to Houston Dynamo, which makes sense. Joe Willis was just traded to Nashville, so Lopez going into Houston and being the starter would make a ton of sense. And it would reportedly be a free transfer. He, in 2019, was with Real España. Solomon Asante was just named the USL Championship MVP. He is with Phoenix Rising. Reportedly a $5 million offer on the table from Turkish club Gaziantep, which is 9th in the current table in Turkey. We've seen Indy 11 now spending money on the transfer market to a USL League One team. If USL Championship teams start making money like this, they become part of that market, and the whole market continues to grow and grow and grow, and it's a good thing. A couple comments from Don Garber, who spoke at the Soccer X conference in Miami yesterday. He said that the league plans to halt expansion at 30 teams. Okay, I'll believe it possibly when I see it. He says there are no plans to alter the MLS calendar to match the European leagues because of weather, travel, and other complicated logistics. And he said that initiatives are in place for MLS to get more involved in the women's game. And we know they've talked about more partnerships with NWSL and things like that, but it sounds like they're going to get more structured in pushing MLS ownership to get more involved in the women's game, which I think is a very good thing. So that's all the latest in the SDH universe. We've got 1v1s coming up today. We've got a Crumpets and Espresso coming out today. We've got our Broadcasters Roundtable podcast coming out this weekend. Soccer Over There will not be live on Monday night. I've essentially been called into soccer jury duty. I'll be on a discipline and protest hearing on Monday night at Georgia Soccer. So no Soccer Over There on Thanksgiving week. We'll have a Crumpets and Espresso-like type of update as we go into the weekend following Thanksgiving. But we'll be back for a normal show Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for all the scarves and T-shirts and stickers and coffee mugs that you guys have bought to support the show. Thank you so much. Be bach with you Monday. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.